Today we will be briefing you on a 2022 comedy crime drama, Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. Sit back and enjoy. The COVID-19 pandemic is just getting started when the movie opens in May 2020. Claire DeBella, the governor of Connecticut, is having an in-home interview when she gets a strange package. Scientist Lionel Toussaint of Alpha Industries is on a video call with his superiors, who are pleading with him not to give his approval to his boss, Miles Braun's crazy ideas because they could endanger lives with his latest invention. The same package is then delivered to Lionel by Miles. Supermodel Birdie J is being looked after by her overworked assistant Peg at a party as they both receive the package from Miles, and Peg is attempting to keep an inebriated Birdie away from her phone. Men's Rights, Twitch star Duke Cody's mother informs him that he received the package as well while he is filming a video with his girlfriend Whiskey. To try to figure out how to open the box, Duke, Birdie, Lionel, and Claire all make phone calls. The remainder of the box is made up of a series of puzzles that, once Lionel solves them, reveal a building model and an invitation from Miles to spend the weekend on his private island. Cassandra Andy Brand is the last recipient of the package, and she simply shatters the box to pieces before discovering the invitation. In the next scene, Natasha Lyonne, Angela Lansbury, Stephen Sondheim, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar are all talking to Detective Benoit Blanc via video chat while he is in the bathtub. They are all concerned that Blanc isn't leaving his apartment between cases. Then, Blanc's partner Philip calls Blanc to let him know he has a box. In the next scene, Blanc comes along to join the visitors as they wait for a ship to take them to Miles Island at a dock. Claire, Birdie, Lionel, and Duke are excited to meet Blanc and learn about his well-known cases. Minutes before they leave, Miles' assistant instructs them to take a disinfectant that will let them talk to each other without masks. Everyone is in a state of shock as they board the boat when Andy shows up. Lionel on board the ship informs Blanc that everyone is surprised to see Andy there because of their infamous fight after Miles left her out of a crucial business deal. The visitors arrive on Miles Island, where he meets them along with an unnamed visitor he has given the name DeRoll. The Glass Onion, which Miles calls his home after a bar where the group used to congregate, is then revealed. Blanc appears to meet Andy for the first time as he explains that they will be participating in a murder mystery in which he is the victim. He also gives them all unique bracelets to wear in their rooms. After that, Blanc visits Miles' office because it turns out that despite receiving the invitation, Miles did not actually invite Blanc to the event. The visitors settle in and head to the pool while consuming kombucha that has been spiked. In spite of Duke noticing, Whiskey seems to be approaching Miles at this point. Birdie remarks that Miles was a nobody when she first met him as Peg approaches her and asks her to speak with Miles about a personal matter. Before Andy arrives to rant against him and the others because she understands that they are clinging to Miles because he supports all of their endeavors, Claire's run for office, Duke's Twitch career, etc., Miles sits down to deliver a brief speech to the group. Peg then goes to find Miles and asks him herself to lay off Birdie, as the matter concerns a sweatshop in Bangladesh that made the clothes she manufactures, but Miles isn't backing down. Blanc attempts to smoke a cigar but is scared off by an alarm. He then sees Duke catching Miles and Whiskey hooking up in his bedroom. Miles gathers people for drinks before sitting down for the mystery to start. Blanc deduces almost immediately that the would-be murderer is Birdie, because she is seated directly across from a statue with a time-released crossbow that would strike Miles. The arrow kills Miles, which irritates him but impresses everyone else. Miles goes to clean himself up, with Blanc following him and apologizing for spoiling the surprise so quickly, despite the fact that he has brought people together who all have legitimate reasons to want him dead. Blanc then notices a framed artifact that Miles has, which is a cocktail napkin on which he allegedly scribbled the details that led to Alpha's development. Miles informs the guests that he has the real Mona Lisa on loan from the Louvre because they are short on funds due to the pandemic while the guests carry on drinking. It has an alert alarm system with an obvious failsafe. The group is then gathered by Miles for a subsequent presentation. He has created a brand new and proven fuel source called Clear that powers the entire Glass Onion. Lionel tells him that this is absurd because Clear required at least 2 years of testing before it was made public. Duke confronts Andy after she calls Miles out once more, telling her that she ultimately lost the argument. She leaves the gathering. Everyone keeps partying, and Duke calls Miles' attention to something on his phone that he claims could change the course of events and land Duke a coveted position in Alpha News. Duke receives a drink that Miles has prepared and starts choking shortly after. While the others try to assist, Duke dies. His phone stops beeping from notifications, so when the group starts to look for it, no one can find it. People start to believe that Miles was the intended victim and that he was poisoned, and they also notice that Duke's gun, which is always with him, is missing. When 10 o'clock rolls around, the lights start to fade out all over the place. Whiskey then comes in screaming that Andy ransacked their room. In the shadows, Blanc pursues Andy, but just as they start conversing, a gunshot from an unidentified attacker hits Andy. When the others enter, they see Blanc standing over her. The group is then gathered by him in another room. The movie then flashes back to Blanc's acceptance of the invitation. Helen, Andy's identical twin sister, paid him a visit and gave him the broken puzzle box. Although Andy is rumored to have committed suicide a few days prior, Helen tells Blanc that she thinks Andy was actually murdered. Andy was excluded from the clear deal by Miles because she recognized its potential for danger, but behind her back, he obtained testimony against her from Claire, Lionel, Duke, and Bertie in order to completely exclude her from Alpha. Helen points out that the four of them had been close friends with Andy in the beginning, and that it was she who introduced them to Miles, whom they all thought was a loser. They didn't start to care about him until he rose to the top and saved them. In her rage, Andy discovered the true cocktail napkin, where she wrote all the Alpha concepts that Miles appropriated and claimed as his own. Since the envelope was missing from her house and there was no suicide note, Helen believes one of the group poisoned Andy and left her body in her car to make it appear as though she committed suicide. Blanc has the idea that he and Helen should visit the island while Helen pretends to be Andy. Despite her initial reservations, she can impersonate Andy by changing her accent and hair. When Andy's appearance on the boat surprises Duke and Bertie, Blanc gives Helen advice on how to behave covertly. Helen gets wasted while they are on the island and watches the visitors to spy on them and find opportunities. She overhears Lionel and Claire discussing how Claire could harm their political careers because Claire might lose supporters and Lionel hasn't made it clear that Claire could leak, which could result in enormous explosions. Helen also hides a tape recorder in Bertie's bag, which she uses to record a conversation with Peg in which Bertie confesses to having approved a statement claiming full responsibility for the Bangladeshi sweatshops in order for Miles to pay her. Finally, Helen tells Whiskey that she doesn't feel at ease in her relationship with Duke because he only views her as arm candy. Additionally, it turns out that he asked Whiskey to seduce Miles in order to persuade Miles to let Duke appear on Alpha News. However, Miles does not want to receive negative publicity because Duke attempted to sell erection pills to teenage boys. In order to have an excuse to leave the party and search through people's rooms for the envelope, Blanc instructs Helen to start the argument that she would lose during the evening party. After Duke is killed, Whiskey finds Helen in her room and prepares to shoot her with a trident gun, but the lights going out give Helen time to flee. Before the attacker shoots at her, she and Blanc catch up with one another. Helen survives because she had one of Andy's handbooks with her, but Blanc uses Jeremy Renner hot sauce to make it appear to the rest of the group that Helen has died, giving her the chance to carry on her search. Helen discovers the envelope in Miles' office, and after Andy's passing has just become widely known, she begins to receive condolences from people. Blanc then informs the group that Miles is not the tech genius he portrays himself to be due to his use of grammatical errors and other foolish ideas. He goes one step further and adamantly informs them that Miles is the real murderer. He claimed that Duke accidentally grabbed the glass that was intended for Miles, but instead of waiting for a chance to plant the gun and turn out the lights as Blanc had suggested, he gave it to Duke and took his gun. Duke was killed because he gave Miles access to the Andy's death article, which he intended to use as leverage to blackmail Miles into joining Alpha News. Knowing that Duke was fatally allergic to pineapples, Miles added pineapple juice to his beverage. Days earlier, as he was leaving Andy's house, Duke was almost struck by Miles' car. There was no response when Duke, Claire, Lionel, and Bertie went to check on Andy. Miles had murdered her after learning about the email from Lionel in which Andy was holding the envelope. When Helen appears, everyone immediately realizes that she is Andy's identical twin. They have no evidence after Miles burns the napkin that she uses to demonstrate that Andy was the true mastermind. Helen calls them shitheads because no one else in the group speaks up to defend Andy. Blanc departs with Helen's drink after accepting failure. As Blanc had previously stated, Helen is more nimble-minded when intoxicated, so she downs her drink and starts breaking Miles's various priceless possessions. When Helen starts a fire, the rest of the group joins her in support and begins smashing objects. She follows that by giving Miles the other item Blanc gave her, a sample of clear. The glass onion is destroyed when Helen throws it into the fire, which spreads to the vents and causes a huge explosion. Blanc and Derol smoke cigars and observe from a distance. Helen decides to repay Miles one last favor by letting the Mona Lisa's case catch fire as Miles' home burns to the ground. Miles reprimands and belittles Helen as the guests leave, telling her that she still lacks evidence that Andy did anything wrong but is happy with the knowledge that she destroyed Miles's reputation and entire business empire. Just as the police arrive on the island, the remaining visitors decide to testify against Miles. The final scene shows Helen joining Blanc by the water, and she grins contentedly as she looks out to the sea. To watch more content like this, subscribe to our channel and don't forget to like the video.